Chosen one, God told me to tell you something, and I do not say that lightly. I do not say that with the casualness of someone who throws around divine attribution to get attention. I say it because what is about to happen in your life over the coming days is so loaded with power that you cannot afford to receive it unprepared, and the preparation is not what you think it is. He said, tell your family. Not warn your family, not scare your family. Tell them. Tell them that what is coming is not a storm, it is a download. A concentrated delivery of power, provision, and positioning that has been accumulating in the spirit for longer than you realize. And the reason he said to tell your family specifically is because what arrives for you does not arrive for you alone. It lands on the house. It saturates the bloodline. It reaches the people connected to your name in ways they will not understand until it begins to manifest. If that just moved something inside you, if a part of your chest just opened up or your breathing just shifted without you choosing it, that is not emotion. That is the advance signal. The same way, a change in pressure tells your body a weather system is approaching before the sky changes. Your spirit is registering a shift in the atmosphere around your life, and you are right to pay attention to it. Before we go any further, if you can feel what I am describing, if something in you already knows that the coming days are different from the days you have been walking through, type power is loading in the comments below. Not to prove something to anyone else, to mark this moment, because the distance between hearing a message and anchoring it into your timeline is the distance between information and transformation, and I want this to transform you. Now let me explain what I mean by loaded, because that word was chosen carefully, and it carries a weight that most people miss when they hear it in spiritual context. When something is loaded, it means the energy, the provision, the power has already been placed into the chamber. It is not being created. It is not being gathered. It is not being decided upon. It has already been measured, already been assigned, already been positioned for release. The only thing that determines whether the loaded power reaches its target is the readiness of the receiver. Think about that. The power is not the variable. You are the variable. God has already loaded the coming days with everything you need. The question is not whether it will be released. It will. The question is whether you will be in a position to receive it when it arrives. And that is exactly what this message is about. Not the power itself, your readiness for it. And here is where I need to be honest with you about something that may be uncomfortable to hear. Most people who hear that power is coming will lose it. Not because the power is withdrawn, not because God changes his mind, because the receiver is not calibrated to hold what is being sent. It is like pouring a river through a garden hose. The water is there, the pressure is there, the delivery system cannot contain it. And what should have been a life-changing flood becomes a trickle that barely wets the ground. That is not a metaphor. That is the pattern I have watched play out hundreds of times. Someone receives a word. They feel the truth of it in their spirit. The days pass. The power arrives. And because nothing in them was adjusted to hold it, the power moves through them instead of settling in them. They feel a flash of something, a moment of clarity, a day of unusual energy, and then it fades, and they wonder if they imagined it. They did not imagine it. They were not ready to contain it. There is something else I need to name about the loading season that you have been living through, because it explains a behavior you have been ashamed of. During this season, you pulled away from people, not dramatically, quietly. You stopped calling the friend who used to be your closest confidant. You declined invitations without guilt. You sat in rooms full of people and felt more alone than when you were actually alone. And you told yourself this was depression or antisocial behavior or something wrong with your relational wiring. It was none of those things. What was happening was insulation. When God is loading power into a vessel, he thins the connections that would dissipate the charge before the release. Not every connection. The ones that drain without replenishing. The ones that pull from you without pouring back. The ones that would distribute the power sideways before it could be directed forward. The pulling away was not pathology. It was preparation. God was consolidating your energy, reducing the number of outlets so that when the power released, it would flow with maximum force in the direction He intended. The people who are supposed to be in your life during the release season will return naturally. The ones who do not return were holding space that needed to be cleared. You are not broken for wanting solitude during the heaviest season of your life. You are being insulated for what is next. And what is next requires the kind of concentrated power that scattered connections cannot sustain. If that just named something you have been carrying silently, if the shame of your withdrawal just lifted because you now understand it was strategic, type "insulated for power" in the comments. That is not a phrase. That is a diagnosis that has been waiting to be spoken over you since the pulling away began. And here is one final piece of the pattern that I want to lay before you before we move forward. During the loading season, you had dreams. Not ordinary dreams. Dreams with weight. Dreams where you woke up and the feeling of the dream stayed with you longer than dreams normally do. Dreams where specific people appeared, specific places materialized, specific words were spoken that you could not quite remember, but could not quite forget either. Those were not random firings of a sleeping brain. Those were previews, downloads delivered during the only window when your conscious mind was not filtering them. Your waking brain, operating in partial synchronization, cannot process the full resolution of what God is sending. But your sleeping brain, temporarily freed from the filters that daytime stress imposes, receives pieces of the transmission. That is why the dreams felt important. Because they were important. They were fragments of the coming power, making early contact with the only receiver that was open at the time. When the whole brain activation is restored, when both hemispheres are synchronized and the receiver is operating at designed capacity, those dream fragments will begin to make sense in waking life. The faces will appear. The places will become familiar. The words will arrive complete instead of broken. That is the difference between receiving a download on a partial system and receiving it on a full one. The content does not change. The resolution does. You are going to be ready. That is why this message exists. Not to announce what is coming, to prepare the vessel that will carry it. Let me describe this more precisely because the specificity matters. You have had a thought recently, maybe more than once, that goes something like this. What if I am not actually chosen? What if I am just someone who listens to these messages because they make me feel better, but the real chosen ones are somewhere else doing real things while I am sitting here in the same situation I was in last year? That thought has a name. I call it the readiness illusion. It is the belief that readiness looks like having everything together, that the person who is prepared for power is the person who already has evidence of power. But that is the opposite of how preparation works. Preparation looks like incompleteness. It looks like the gap between what you know you are and what the world currently sees. It looks like holding a promise you cannot prove and refusing to let go of it even when the evidence suggests you should. The person who has everything together does not need preparation. They need maintenance. Preparation is for the person who is standing in the gap between the old and the new, with empty hands and tired eyes, and a spirit that somehow still says yes. That is you. And the readiness illusion tried to convince you that your emptiness disqualified you. But your emptiness is the qualification. Empty hands receive, full hands cannot. Think about every major figure in sacred history who received massive power. Moses had empty hands and a stutter. David had empty hands and a slingshot. Joseph had empty hands and a prison cell. The pattern is unmistakable. God loads power into empty vessels because empty vessels have room for what he is sending. Full vessels overflow and waste. You have been emptied not by accident, by design. And the design is now ready for the filling. There is a second layer to this that connects directly to your family. The readiness illusion does not just operate in you, it operates in the way your family sees you. They may have looked at your season of exhaustion and drawn conclusions. They may have quietly worried. They may have wondered why the person they remember as strong and sharp and full of fire seems diminished. And they did not say anything because they love you and did not want to add to your weight. But here is what they could not see. The diminishing was not decline. It was compression. The same way a spring must be compressed before it can release its full force. You were being compressed by the loading season, so that the power, when it arrives, launches with velocity they did not think was possible. They will see it. They will see you snap back into a version of yourself they thought was gone. And they will realize that what they interpreted as fading was actually loading. That is why God said to tell them, not because they need to believe before it happens, but so that when it happens, they will have the framework to understand it. They will not be afraid of the change. They will recognize it as the thing they were told to prepare for, and their recognition will amplify the power instead of resisting it. Let me describe the pattern I see in people who are entering this kind of season, because I want you to recognize yourself in it before I give you the framework that changes how you move through it. Over the past few weeks, maybe longer, you have felt a strange combination of two things that do not seem like they should exist together. The first is exhaustion, a tiredness that is not physical, a tiredness that sleep does not address, a heaviness that sits behind your eyes and in the center of your chest and makes ordinary tasks feel like they require extraordinary effort. The kind of tired where you sit down to rest and realize that even resting takes energy you do not have. The second thing you have felt is anticipation, not excitement. Something deeper than excitement, a sense that something is coming, a feeling in the atmosphere of your life that something is about to shift. You cannot point to any evidence. Nothing in your external circumstances has changed. But something in the frequency of your days feels different, like the air before a thunderstorm, like the silence before a song begins. These two things, the exhaustion and the anticipation, seem contradictory. How can you be completely drained and simultaneously aware that something powerful is approaching? But they are not contradictory. They are complementary. They are the two signature symptoms of what I call the loading season, and you are in the final stage of it right now. The loading season is the specific phase that precedes every major divine release. It is the period where the preparation intensifies to its highest point just before the delivery begins. And the reason it feels like exhaustion is because the preparation is not happening to your circumstances, it is happening to you. Your capacity is being stretched. Your spiritual infrastructure is being reinforced. The foundations of your identity are being tested one final time to confirm they can hold the weight of what is about to be placed on them. You have been interpreting the exhaustion as a problem. It is not a problem. It is construction. The same way a muscle must be torn before it grows, the same way a foundation must be stressed before it is certified. You are being brought to the edge of your current capacity, not to break you, but to expand you. And the expansion feels like breaking because no one told you the difference. Here is the difference. Breaking produces despair. Expansion produces exhaustion with hope. Breaking makes you want to quit. Expansion makes you want to rest. And the fact that you have not quit, The fact that you are still here, still listening, still holding on despite the tiredness, tells me with certainty that you are not breaking, you are expanding, and the expansion is almost complete. Now let me go deeper into what the loading season has been doing to you specifically, because this is where the pattern moves from general to personal. And I say this carefully because what I am about to name is something you have been carrying alone, and naming it in front of you may unlock something that has been held back. During the loading season, your mind has changed, not dramatically, gradually, in ways so subtle you attributed them to stress or age or the general weight of the season you are walking through. But the changes are specific, and they follow a pattern that has been documented in ways most spiritual communities have never been exposed to. Your focus has shortened. Tasks that used to hold your attention for hours now lose you within minutes. You pick up your phone and forget what you opened it for. You start conversations and lose the thread halfway through. Your memory, which used to serve you with precision, has become unreliable in small but consistent ways. Names slip, appointments blur. The sharp edges of your thinking have become soft and rounded in a way that frustrates you because you know that is not who you are. You have blamed stress. You have blamed your schedule. You have blamed the emotional weight of carrying responsibilities that do not thank you. And those factors are real. They contribute, but they are not the root cause. The root cause is something that sits underneath all of those factors and has been operating since long before this particular season of your life began. Here is what I mean. There is a condition, not a disease, not a disorder, a condition where the two hemispheres of the brain gradually fall out of their designed synchronization. When they are working together, which is the state you were born into, the result is what researchers call whole brain activation. Creativity, intuition, logical processing, emotional regulation, and spiritual receptivity all operate at their designed maximum. The ideas arrive complete. The decisions feel clear. The connection between what you know and what you do has no gap. When the synchronization breaks down, which happens gradually under the accumulated pressure of modern life, you begin to operate on a fraction of your designed capacity, not a fraction of your intelligence, a fraction of your integration. The left brain works, the right brain works, but they stop talking to each other with the fluency they had when you were a child, and the result is exactly the fog you have been living in, the slow thinking, the spiritual dryness. The feeling that you are present in your own life, but not fully inhabiting it. And here is where this connects directly to the loading season and the power that is being loaded for your coming days. The power God is sending requires a receiver that is operating at full capacity, not partial, not fragmented, full. The same way, a satellite dish must be aligned precisely to receive a signal from orbit. Your mind must be synchronized to receive the download that has been loaded for you. And if the synchronization is off, the signal arrives, but it cannot be processed. It becomes static, noise, a feeling of something important that you cannot translate into anything actionable. That is what has been happening. Not that God stopped speaking, not that the power stopped flowing, but that the receiver, your brain, the biological instrument through which divine instruction becomes tangible experience, has been operating below the threshold required to process what is being sent. You have been standing in the rain with a closed umbrella, not because you wanted to stay dry, because you did not know the umbrella was closed. Now I want to tell you something about the specific timing of this message that is not accidental. The loading season does not last forever. It has a window, and that window is defined not by a calendar date, but by a readiness threshold. When the expansion of your capacity reaches the point where it can hold what has been loaded, the release begins. the exhaustion lifts. The anticipation converts into arrival, and the days that follow are unlike anything that came before them. You are at the threshold right now. The exhaustion you have been feeling is not the middle of the loading season. It is the end. The intensity has peaked because the capacity has reached its target. The muscle has been torn for the last time, and the growth is about to become visible. And the fact that you are hearing this right now, at this exact moment, is the announcement that the release window is opening. If that just created a physical sensation somewhere in your body, if your spine just straightened or your hands just relaxed, or a warmth moved through your chest, type "the window is opening" in the comments below. That is your spirit confirming what your mind has not yet processed. Trust the body. It knows before the brain does. But here is where I need to give you something practical, because knowing that power is coming is useless if you do not know how to position yourself to receive it. And the positioning is not what most spiritual teachings tell you it is. It is not about praying more. It is not about fasting harder. It is not about increasing your discipline or cleaning up your behavior or performing some spiritual ritual that signals worthiness. The positioning is neurological. The readiness God is looking for is not behavioral. It is biological. It is about whether the instrument He designed to receive the download is actually online and functioning at its full capacity. Because you can have the purest heart, the most sincere faith, and the deepest devotion, and if the receiver is running on half power, the download arrives at half resolution. That is not God withholding. That is physics meeting faith. The physics of a brain that was designed to operate in synchronization and has been running in fragments. Maybe right now you are wondering how it is possible that something neurological could affect something spiritual. That feels like two different categories. But consider this. Every spiritual experience you have ever had was processed through your brain. Every moment of divine clarity, every answered prayer, every time you felt the presence of God so strongly it brought you to your knees. All of it was received, interpreted, and translated into lived experience by the organ sitting between your ears. The brain is not separate from the spiritual life. It is the instrument of the spiritual life. And the condition of the instrument determines the quality of the reception. That is why two people can sit in the same room and hear the same word, and one receives a life-changing revelation while the other hears nice ideas. The difference is not always faith. Sometimes the difference is synchronization. Sometimes the difference is the state of the receiver. And the good news, the really good news, is that unlike faith, which is mysterious and cannot be measured, synchronization can be restored. It can be measured. It can be addressed with specificity and precision, and it can be done quickly. I am going to tell you exactly how later in this message, because what a team of neuroscientists built around this discovery is unlike anything the spiritual community has had access to before. But first, I need to tell your family something, because God did not say tell you. He said, tell your family. I want to pause here and hold something important in front of you before we continue to what was discovered about restoring the receiver. Because there is something happening in your life right now that confirms the loading season is ending, and I do not want you to miss it. Over the past few days, maybe the past week, you have felt a strange restlessness, not anxiety, not fear. Something else, a feeling like you are supposed to be doing something specific, but you cannot identify what it is. You have paced, you have reorganized. You have started things and stopped them. The restlessness does not go away when you rest. It does not go away when you work. It sits in you like an engine running with no destination. That restlessness is the power pressing against the walls of the container, looking for the exit point. It is the spiritual equivalent of water rising behind a dam. The water does not care about the dam. It cares about flowing. And the pressure you feel is the power asking the question, are you ready for me to move? That is not stress. That is the advance team of your breakthrough. And there is another sign that you may have noticed without connecting it to what is happening spiritually. Synchronicities have increased, small ones, a number that keeps appearing, a name that keeps coming up in unrelated conversations, a song that plays at the exact moment you are thinking about something specific. These are not coincidences. These are coordinates. They are the way the celebration frequency broadcasts its location through the physical world. It is saying, I am here. I am close. The power is loaded. Open the receiver. Now, I also need to speak to a very specific fear that lives in the hearts of people who have been in the loading season for a long time. It is the fear that the power will arrive and you will not know what to do with it, that you will receive the blessing and fumble it, that the opportunity will come and you will be too slow, too foggy, too broken to act on it in time. That fear is valid because it is based on experience. You have had moments in the past where clarity arrived briefly and then disappeared before you could act on it. You have had seasons where a door opened and closed before you could walk through it. And those experiences taught your nervous system to expect the pattern to repeat. Receive something good, lose it before it becomes permanent. But here is what those experiences did not account for. In every previous instance, you were receiving on a partial receiver. The clarity came through at half resolution. The door was visible but blurry. The opportunity arrived, but the processing speed required to act on it was compromised. It was not that you were too slow. It was that the instrument processing the signal was operating below the threshold required for real-time response. When the receiver is restored, when both hemispheres are synchronized, and the whole brain is activated, the processing speed changes fundamentally. Clarity does not arrive and disappear. It arrives and stays. Doors do not flash open and shut. They open and wait because you are moving at the speed required to walk through them. The fear of fumbling was valid under the old conditions. Under the restored conditions, the fear itself becomes irrelevant. Not because you become perfect, because you become integrated. And integration is what allows power to be held instead of spilled. When God says, "Tell your family to prepare," He is communicating something most messages miss entirely. He is saying that what is coming is not a personal blessing. It is a household event. The power that has been loaded for your coming days does not arrive for you and stop at your skin. It radiates, it reaches, it saturates the atmosphere of every space you occupy regularly. Your children will feel it before they understand it. Your spouse will respond to it before they can name it. The people who live under your roof or walk closely with you will begin to experience shifts they cannot explain. Better sleep, clearer thinking, a sense of ease that replaces the tension that has been sitting in the house like invisible furniture. Not because they did the spiritual work you did, because the blessing that lands on the head of the household flows downhill into every life connected to that household. That is not a new idea. That is one of the oldest patterns in sacred history. When favor arrived for Abraham, it covered Lot. When Joseph was elevated, his entire family was fed. When the blessing of one reaches the house is changed. And your house is about to be changed. But here is what your family needs to understand in order to receive it properly. They need to understand that the days immediately before a major release often look like the worst days. The days when nothing seems to work, when arguments flare without cause, when small things break, when the atmosphere in the house thickens with a tension nobody created. Those are not signs that things are falling apart. Those are signs that